Když si většina lidí vzpomene na hříšný tanec, představí si romantiku, hudbu a nezapomenutelnou chemii mezi dítětem Jennifer Grey a Johnnym Patrickem, kterého hraje Patrick Swayze. Působí to jako jednoduchý příběh o stydlivé dívce, která se naučí tančit a během letních prázdnin se zamiluje. Ale když se na film díváte jako dospělí, stane se něco překvapivého. Pod hudbou a slavnými replikami si začnete všímat detailů, které byste v mládí snadno přehlédli. Vztahy se zdají být komplikovanější, témata se stávají těžšími. A najednou příběh mezi miminkem a Johnnym nevypadá tak nevinně jako kdysi. Film nikdy neměl být úspěšný. Jednou z nejpřekvapivějších věcí, kterých si dospělí často všimnou, když se znovu podívají na hříšný tanec, je to, jak nepravděpodobný byl ve skutečnosti úspěch filmu. Dnes je připomínán jako kulturní fenomén, který formoval celou generaci, ale během natáčení téměř nikdo zúčastněný nevěřil, že se z něj stane hit. Scénář se roky snažil najít podporu, údajně byl více než 40krát odmítnut, než se konečně jedno malé studio rozhodlo riskovat. I když byl projekt schválen, rozpočet byl extrémně omezený, což filmaře donutilo natočit film s minimálními zdroji a neustálou nejistotou, zda se produkce uskuteční. Jennifer Grey, která hrála Francejnu holčičku, později vzpomínala, že film od začátku působil chaoticky. Mnoho členů obsazení bylo v té době relativně neznámých a produkce čelila četným neúspěchům, které celý projekt činili křehkým. Natáčení neustále přerušovalo zpoždění kvůli počasí a štáb se potýkal se vším, od napjatých harmonogramů až po finanční tlak. Natáčení probíhalo na místech ve Virginii a Severní Karolíně, kde se teploty během natáčení mohly dramaticky měnit. Některé dny se horko vyšplhalo vysoko nad 38 stupňů Celsia, zatímco jindy kleslo téměř k 4 stupňům. Tyto nepředvídatelné podmínky způsobily, že venkovní scény byly vyčerpávající jak pro herce, tak pro štáb. Patrick Swayze, který stvárnil tanečního instruktora Johnnyho Castla, byl již tehdy nejznámější tváří projektu. Přesto i jemu někteří lidé z filmového průmyslu doporučili, aby se neúčastnil. Nízký rozpočet filmu a nejistá budoucnost ho dělali zdánlivě riskantním kariérním krokem. Swayze si také na začátku své kariéry vážně zranil koleno, což z intenzivních tanečních scén dělalo fyzicky náročné. Navzdory těmto obavám se rozhodl roli věnovat, což nakonec definovalo jeho odkaz v Hollywoodu. Dalším detailem, kterého si dospělí obvykle všímají, když se dozvídají o produkci filmu, je to, jak křehký byl celý projekt v zákulisí. Jennifer Grey later explained that everything seemed to go wrong during filming. Crew members were replaced, schedules shifted constantly, and the budget was so tight that even minor delays caused serious problems. Yet, in a strange way, this pressure may have helped shape the emotional intensity that appears on screen. The characters of Baby and Johnny often feel like they are fighting against forces around them, and the actors themselves were experiencing a similar struggle during production. What makes this story even more remarkable is that the film almost disappeared after it was finished. Early reactions from some producers were extremely negative. According to screenwriter Eleanor Bergstein, one producer even suggested destroying the film's negative and collecting the insurance money instead of releasing it. At that moment, the project that would later become one of the most beloved romantic films ever made was seen as worthless. But the story didn't end there. When the movie finally reached theaters, something unexpected happened. Audiences connected deeply with the characters and the emotional journey of the story. Word of mouth spread quickly, and viewers began returning to theaters multiple times. Some fans reportedly watched the movie so often that they became known as members of the Stowe Plus Club, referring to people who saw it more than Stowe times. The real tension between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze. One of the most fascinating details adults often notice when looking deeper into Dirty Dancing is the complicated relationship between its two stars, Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze. On screen, Baby and Johnny share one of the most memorable romantic dynamics in film history. Their chemistry feels natural, emotional, and at times almost electric. But behind the scenes, the reality was far more complicated. The two actors were not naturally compatible personalities, and their working relationship began with tension that nearly affected the production itself. Their history actually began before Dirty Dancing. Grey and Swayze had already worked together on the film Red Dawn, and their personalities clashed during that project. When casting discussions began for the role of Johnny, Grey was reportedly hesitant to work with him again. According to screenwriter Eleanor Bergstein, Grey even begged the production team to consider another actor. At the time, several well-known names had already been considered for the role, including Benicio del Toro, Val Kilmer, and Billy Zane. Any one of them might have taken the part that would later become inseparable from Swayze's legacy. However, the filmmakers believed Swayze possessed something the others did not. He was not only an actor, but also a trained dancer who had studied ballet extensively. His physical confidence and ability to move naturally were essential for the character of Johnny. Bergstein was especially drawn to his distinctive look, later explaining that she searched through photos of actors until she found the hooded eyes she imagined for Johnny. When she saw Swayze's photograph, she immediately believed he was the right choice. Despite Gray's reservations, Swayze agreed to speak with her privately to resolve their differences. The conversation reportedly lasted about half an hour, and when they returned, both actors had tears in their eyes. Something about that moment changed the dynamic between them. While they never became close friends during filming, they agreed to move forward professionally and give the story everything they had. Even then, their personalities continued to clash. Swayze approached acting with intense discipline, while Gray was known for her spontaneous emotional reactions. In his autobiography, Swayze later described moments when Gray would become overwhelmed by criticism or suddenly burst into laughter during serious scenes, forcing multiple retakes. From his perspective, these moments were frustrating because they slowed down production on a film that was already under severe time pressure. Yet this tension turned out to be strangely beneficial. Choreographer Kenny Ortega later explained that the emotional friction between the actors actually helped create the complicated dynamic between Johnny and Baby. Their characters were not supposed to feel perfectly comfortable with each other. Johnny was confident, experienced, and worldly, while Baby was nervous, inexperienced, and trying to prove herself. The real-life discomfort between the actors helped bring that imbalance to life on screen. When adults revisit the film, they often realize that many of the scenes feel authentic precisely because of that tension. The hesitation in Baby's movements, the subtle irritation in Johnny's expressions, and the gradual shift toward mutual respect all reflect something real happening between the performers. Instead of hiding their differences, the filmmakers allowed those emotions to shape the story, the unscripted moments that made the film feel real. Another detail that becomes more obvious when adults revisit Dirty Dancing is how many of the film's most memorable moments were never planned. While the story appears carefully constructed, several scenes that audiences remember best actually happened by accident during filming. These unscripted moments helped create a sense of authenticity that would become one of the film's defining qualities. One of the most famous examples occurs during the rehearsal scene when Johnny trails his fingers down Baby's arm as part of a dance move. In the finished film, Baby cannot stop laughing, while Johnny grows increasingly irritated with her. For years, viewers assumed the moment was scripted as a playful way to show Baby's nervous personality. In reality, Jennifer Grey was genuinely ticklish and could not stop laughing when Patrick Swayze performed the move. Swayze's reaction in the scene was not acting either. He was actually frustrated because the repeated laughter was preventing them from completing the take properly. Originally, the filmmakers planned to reshoot the scene without the laughter so it would appear smoother. However, while reviewing footage later, the editors rediscovered the accidental version. Screenwriter Eleanor Bergstein recalled that everyone watching it burst into laughter because the interaction felt so natural. Instead of discarding the take, they decided to include it in the film. What began as a mistake ultimately became one of the most charming moments in the entire movie. Another scene that reveals the improvisational energy behind the film is the well-known rehearsal sequence set to the song "Love is Strange." In this part of the story, Johnny and Baby practice dancing together while joking and moving freely around the room. Many viewers assume the scene was carefully choreographed to show the growing bond between the characters. But in reality, much of that footage came from informal rehearsal sessions, when the actors were simply warming up and experimenting with different movements. The filmmakers initially filmed these moments as practice footage, not expecting to use them in the final cut. Yet when the editors reviewed the material, they noticed something unique about the way Gray and Swayze interacted during those relaxed rehearsals. Their movements looked spontaneous rather than rehearsed, and the playful tone captured the awkward stage of Baby learning to trust Johnny. Instead of staging a more polished sequence, the production team decided that the raw rehearsal footage communicated the relationship more honestly. This approach reflects an interesting truth about the entire film. While the production faced constant obstacles and technical limitations, those same challenges often produced unexpected creative advantages. Because the filmmakers lacked time and resources to perfect every scene, They sometimes relied on instinct rather than precision. The result was a film that feels less manufactured and more emotionally genuine. The story adults realize is much darker than it first appears. When many people first watch Dirty Dancing, especially at a young age, the story feels like a simple romantic coming-of-age tale. It seems to revolve around dancing, summer romance, and the transformation of a shy girl who learns confidence. But when adults revisit the film later in life, they often realize that the story contains far heavier themes than they initially understood. Beneath the music and the romance, the movie quietly explores issues involving class, responsibility, and one of the most controversial social topics of its era. The most significant example is the storyline involving Penny, one of the resort dancers. As children or teenagers watching the film, many viewers barely register what is actually happening to her. The situation is explained quickly and without dramatic emphasis, making it easy for younger audiences to miss the seriousness of the situation. But adults immediately recognize that Penny is facing a dangerous and illegal abortion during a time when women had very limited options. Within the story, Penny becomes pregnant after a brief relationship with Robbie, a charming but irresponsible waiter at the resort. Robbie refuses to take responsibility for the pregnancy and instead gives Penny money so she can arrange the procedure herself. The problem is that the person performing the abortion is not a qualified doctor, which leads to serious complications. When Baby discovers what has happened, she asks her father, who is a physician, to help Penny recover from the procedure. This storyline may seem like a small subplot, but it is actually central to the film's emotional structure. In fact, the writer of the film insisted that the abortion storyline remain part of the script, even when producers suggested removing it. At the time, some potential sponsors worried that the topic would make the film controversial and harm its commercial success. The writer refused to change it, arguing that without that event, the entire story would collapse because it is the reason Baby and Johnny's relationship develops. For adult viewers, this part of the film completely changes the way certain characters are perceived. Robbie initially appears charming and respectable. He is polite with Baby's family and often presents himself as intelligent and thoughtful. Yet his actions reveal a very different personality. He abandons Penny when she needs him most, exposing the hypocrisy behind his confident image. When adults watch the film again, they often notice how sharply the story contrasts Robbie with Johnny. Johnny, who initially appears rough and irresponsible, ultimately proves to be the one who truly cares about Penny. He works hard to raise the money for the procedure and later accepts blame for something he did not do in order to protect others. This reversal challenges the assumptions held by Baby's father and the wealthy guests at the resort, who instinctively distrust Johnny because of his social status. That contrast introduces another theme adults notice more clearly. The film quietly explores class divisions. The resort is divided between wealthy guests enjoying their summer vacations and the workers who entertain them. The staff members, including the dancers, are expected to maintain a certain distance from the guests. Their private lives are rarely considered important by the people they serve. Baby's journey throughout the film slowly dismantles that barrier. At the beginning of the story, she exists entirely within the world of the guests. But as she becomes closer to Johnny and the dancers, she begins to see how unfair those divisions really are. The story becomes less about romance and more about her understanding a different social reality. The famous dance scenes were far more dangerous than they look. When audiences remember Dirty Dancing, the first images that usually come to mind are the film's iconic dance moments. The rehearsals, the lake sequence, and the unforgettable final lift have become some of the most recognizable scenes in film history. But when adults learn what was really happening during those moments, the scenes become even more impressive. Behind the graceful movements and romantic atmosphere were physical risks, injuries, and intense pressure that most viewers never realized while watching the film. One of the most famous sequences in the movie shows Johnny teaching Baby how to perform the lift in a lake. In the story, the moment feels playful and romantic, capturing the growing trust between the two characters. However, the reality of filming the scene was far less comfortable. Although the movie takes place during summer, the lake sequence was filmed in October. The water was extremely cold, and the actors had to repeat the lift multiple times while standing in freezing conditions. The cold created an unexpected challenge for the filmmakers. Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze's lips began turning blue from the temperature, making close-up shots nearly impossible. This is why many of the shots in the lake sequence are wider than typical romantic scenes. The crew had to adjust their filming approach simply to hide the physical effects of the cold on the actors. Another physically demanding moment occurred during the scene, where Johnny and Baby balance on a log above a ravine while dancing. Patrick Swayze refused to use a stunt double for this sequence, even though the movement required careful balance and precise timing. During filming, he injured his knee while performing the stunt. This injury aggravated a previous knee problem he had suffered years earlier, and it created additional complications for the production. Considering how much dancing the film required, the injury could have been disastrous for the project. The movie was already operating on a small budget and had very little room for delays. Yet Swayze continued performing the choreography himself despite the pain, determined to finish the film as planned. That commitment is one reason many of the dance sequences feel so powerful. The movements were not created by a stunt performer or carefully hidden editing tricks. They were performed by the actors themselves. The final dance scene provides perhaps the most surprising revelation of all. For decades, viewers have assumed that the famous lift at the end of the film must have been rehearsed countless times before filming. In reality, Jennifer Grey later admitted that she had never practiced the lift before the day they shot the scene. She was genuinely terrified of attempting it, which is why she avoided rehearsing it during earlier practice sessions. When the cameras finally rolled, Grey had to trust Swayze completely. She simply ran toward him and jumped, hoping he would catch her safely. The moment audiences see in the film was essentially her first real attempt at the lift. That genuine fear and trust between the actors contributed to the emotional power of the scene. Interestingly, Patrick Swayze himself reportedly disliked the film's most famous line, the moment when Johnny declares that nobody puts Baby in a corner. Despite his feelings about the line, the scene surrounding it became one of the most celebrated moments in cinema. The final dance sequence captured everything audiences loved about the film: confidence, transformation, and the triumph of two characters who had overcome the expectations placed upon them. Why adults? Finally understand why the movie became a cultural phenomenon. When people first watched Dirty Dancing, many simply saw a summer romance filled with music and dancing. But as audiences grow older and return to the film, they often begin to understand why the movie became such a powerful cultural phenomenon. Its success was never just about choreography or a love story. The film resonated because it captured something deeply human about growing up, discovering independence and challenging the expectations placed on us by society. One reason the film endured is its music. The soundtrack became almost as famous as the movie itself. Songs like Hungry Eyes, She's Like the Wind, and the unforgettable finale song, I've Had the Time of My Life, were not simply background music. They became emotional anchors for the story. Interestingly, the final song was reportedly chosen only shortly before the climactic dance scene was filmed. Yet the moment it appears in the film, everything suddenly feels complete. The music elevates the emotional payoff of Baby and Johnny's journey, turning the final dance into one of the most recognizable scenes in film history. The soundtrack's popularity exploded after the film's release. Millions of copies were sold around the world, and the songs became inseparable from the movie itself. Even people who had never seen the film recognized the music. At weddings, parties, and celebrations, the final song often appeared as a symbol of joy and nostalgia. This musical legacy helped keep the film alive in public memory long after it left theaters. But the deeper reason the story resonates becomes clearer with age. When viewers are young, they tend to focus on the romance between Baby and Johnny. As adults, however, the film begins to look more like a story about identity and courage. Baby starts the film as a sheltered young woman who has grown up in a comfortable environment. Her parents expect her to follow a predictable path, one that aligns with their social status and values. Johnny represents the opposite world. He is confident, independent, and part of a group of workers who exist outside the protected environment of the resort guests. Through her relationship with him, Baby begins to see a reality she had never considered before. She learns that people are often judged unfairly based on class and appearance. More importantly, she learns to make decisions for herself instead of relying on the expectations of others. This transformation becomes the emotional core of the film. By the time the final dance takes place, Baby is no longer the uncertain girl we met at the beginning of the story. She has discovered confidence, empathy, and the courage to challenge the rules that once defined her world. Johnny's famous declaration that nobody puts Baby in a corner is not just a romantic line. It represents the moment when she refuses to be limited by other people's assumptions. Adults watching the film again often recognize that this message is what truly gives the story its lasting power. The romance is memorable and the dancing is unforgettable. but the emotional journey is what keeps audiences connected to the film decade after decade. It reminds viewers that growing up often means stepping outside the roles society assigns to us and discovering who we really are. Looking back, it's amazing how many layers were hidden inside a movie that once seemed like a simple summer romance. The more people grow up and revisit the story of Baby and Johnny, the more they realize how much was happening beneath the surface. So here's a simple question for you. When you watch Dirty Dancing again as an adult, what details surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoy discovering the hidden stories behind classic movies, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into the films everyone thought they already understood.